Well, we're running the meeting tonight. So we'll go down the agenda item by item. I'll probably need some help going through this agenda since I'm not too familiar with running the meeting, but we're going to now call the meeting to order. This month's regular meeting of the Recreations and Parks has come to order. Let's do a roll call on item B, please.
Okay, Commissioner McCauley?
Here.
Commissioner Deckman?
Here.
Commissioner Blair?
Here.
Vice Chair Rowe?
Present.
And I'd like to just note the absences of Commissioners Joseph Tsai, Corman Super, and Chair Lang. We have a quorum.
All right, so let's do item C, salute to the flag. Please rise and we will recite the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you very much. That was the salute. Let's do item D, which is the approval of the order of agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the order. I'll second.
And thank you for jumping in line there. I appreciate that was my call, but thanks for doing that. So we do have blue folder items or items that were added to the agenda after the initial agenda.
Chair, if I may, we just have to do a vote on that, approving the order.
We did not vote on so let's vote on the approval for the order of agenda, please. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So item E is blue folder items. These are items added after the initial agenda is given out. So these will be emailed after the initial agenda. So do we have any blue folders tonight?
We do not have any this evening.
All right, that makes it a little bit easier. That would be the additional backup materials, et cetera. So let's go, I guess we go to the initial blue folder items, correct? Item E1.
No, that's just a placeholder in case we have any,
Got you.
so we can move on to item F.
So I have this written down in my notes. I carefully took notes during our phone call like 2 months ago.
That's
Put
okay.
there at home next to my Jeopardy television. I was winning tonight. So consent calendar, which, gosh, I am now not familiar with what that is. Would you want to explain that to us again?
Sure. This evening, it's a little bit easier. The consent calendar is items that are more routine. This evening, we only have one item, so item F1. So we just need to have a motion and a second and then a vote to approve that item.
All right, so do we have a motion to approve that item?
Motion to approve the consent calendar?
A second.
And we vote on that with aye?
Aye.
Aye, or nay, of course. So item G is excluded consent calendar items, which I had a definition in my head, but not tonight, Kelly.
We don't have any tonight. Those are items that were pulled by the commission. And since all were approved, we can move on to item H.
Great, and thank you for rolling with the humor here. This is all in fun, but it is serious business. So item H is where we have anyone from the audience or the community to do public participation. Generally speaking, it's 3 minutes, and then we can add additional time if needed. So do we have any public participation on non-agenda items tonight?
Not at this time.
Okay, and maybe we might get call-ins. Sometimes we do, right? So, okay. So let's move on to items that were continued from previous agendas. Do we have anything that we didn't take care of last time?
We do not have any.
This is going swimmingly well. This is smooth as silk. So I guess J would be items for discussion prior to action, which again, I don't know what that is exactly, but let's do that, please.
So I'll start with J1. It's an opportunity for you all to provide input on the upcoming budget cycle for the city. I will introduce our city manager, Mike Wazanski, and he'll provide a brief update on this.
Thanks for coming, Mike. Appreciate it.
Good to see you all.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, and
Thanks.
appreciate your time and volunteerism here as a commission. So this is the time of year where we're beginning our preparation for the ensuing fiscal year budget. So in this case, the 24-25 fiscal year budget, which will begin July 1st. We deliver the proposed city manager's budget to the council each year, middle part of May. And April's the month where I kind of go out and do the road show and ask you all what things you would like to see in the budget, if you had your preference. And we had, of course, funds to cover it, and gather input from you to help in our deliberations. So as we think about it from staff's perspective, we've got our list of items, whatever it might be. This is a chance for you all to sort of insert into that calculation and help us in our conversations internally. And then as I synthesize that information, ultimately propose a budget to the city council that they'll deliberate on and then make final approval. So really no formal presentation tonight, other than just say, I'm here to listen and entertain any questions you might have. Typically, the Rec and Parks Commission is interested in items pertaining to the Community Services Department, capital projects associated with park improvements or other landscape areas. We have a lot of those currently in the budget that are in motion. We've had some exciting progress up at Dominguez Park. We'll be replacing the play equipment there. This commission's been a part of that. We should see that project fully executed by the end of this summer, which is really nice. We're starting work out at Franklin Park here very soon on the shade structures and some new amenities there. We've got work happening out in our courtyard to improve our aesthetic entry to the Civic Center campus. We've got just a laundry list of projects. We've got roofs happening at Alta Vista Park at the community center, also up at Wilderness Park, improving those spaces. We just installed new fencing at our athletic fields at Alta Vista Park. So just constant state of motion. We have over 120 capital projects in our current budget. We can't do all of them in a single fiscal year, but we can usually complete somewhere between 12 and 20 and then design another approximately dozen along with that for construction the following year. So we're as mobilized as we've ever been. We've got some exciting work ahead, but we also have a budget that we've got to prepare for that will likely add some additional initiatives, but I will say this year's budget, unlike perhaps the last couple, won't have quite as much in the way of unallocated fund balance or discretionary resources for the council to ultimately create new projects and assignments. So it's going to be a little bit tighter this year, given the sort of horizon, but we will have Quimby money to spend, we will have Park and Rec facility money to spend, and in some instances, some residual capital funds that might work their way towards park activities. So that's about it for now, and anything you'd like to add or any questions you might have, I'm all ears.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So do you have a list of projects for Rec and Parks that wasn't approved for last year's budget that are still waiting for approval?
Boy, good question. There was at least one project I can think of that was not completely funded. So we funded, and I'm thinking of Wilderness Park, there's been support for the community center renovation there, which is occurring, and that is funded. There's support for renovation of the existing pond. There's also funding for the design of the restoration of the old pond that was lost. So that's been an item that the Rec and Parks Commission has historically supported along with other groups in our city. We aren't fully funded to construct, I believe, the replacement pond that we call it the lower pond on the sort of north side of the park. That will likely require additional funding, but we are likely to start a design build effort this year to try to see that project come to fruition. I'm not sure we'll be ready to actually execute that construction effort necessarily in the next fiscal year. So that's one that comes to mind. I'm trying to think if there's been others that haven't been funded. There has been so much added to the budget over the last 2 years. Most of the ideas have one way or another been funded.
Okay, and if they're funded, then they stay funded.
They
until
stay funded
yeah.
and we carry the money over year to
Okay.
year. So that's something we do fairly regularly, particularly with a capital list of 120 plus projects. You can imagine we're carrying about 100 of them over each time.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, thank you.
I have a question about, for the funding, the city contributes to a recreation budget from city funds, and then there's the Quimby money as well that is set aside. And is there any grant money or anything else that comes in?
Yeah, we pursue grants all the time. In fact, we've had quite a bit of success. The Seaside Lagoon is an example. That project $10 million, we received a $10 million grant from the state, and that's what we're using to fund the design effort for the replacement facility, as well as the waterfront promenade adjacent to the lagoon. We routinely pursue grants through the county for open space improvements. Sometimes we're successful there, sometimes not. But when funds arise at the state level, we go after them. To your earlier question, the department's operations are funded by our general fund. So our taxes and things that we would accrue typically from normal revenues, primarily your property tax, sales tax, transient occupancy tax, things like that accrue to the fund. A portion of those general fund monies ultimately support and subsidize community service operations. Community service is unique. They also are able to generate revenue through their program activity. So in part, the department is also funded by user fees. But for the most part, operations are covered by the general fund. The Quimby Fund, the Open Space Fund, it accrues when we have new residential units constructed in the city. So every new residential unit comes with I think now a $25,000 development impact fee per unit.
Right.
And that funding is paid to the fund when the project typically goes vertical. So not necessarily when you see the grading, not necessarily when you see the foundation poured, but when the developer comes in to pull a permit to begin raising the structure, really the carpentry side of things, they are required to typically pay that fee. That fee then accrues to the fund, and then we will make recommendations each budget cycle for the use of the Quimby monies.
And the Quimby money, is that just for parks, or?
It has
can you use that
restrictions.
for staff, or?
No, you can't use it for operations. You have to use it for park and open space purposes, project purposes in the impacted area. So for simplicity's sake, if the project was constructed in a remote part of the city, it can be used for one of two things: an open space or park and recreation improvement that's immediately adjacent and serving that particular quadrant of the city, or what we call a regional park facility that serves the entire city. So examples of that would be Alta Vista Park or Veterans Park or Wilderness Park. Those are parks that aren't just for the neighborhood, but for the entire community. So Quimby funds can be used for that type of a facility or a more localized open space effort.
And do we anticipate more Quimby revenue coming in the future? Because we have some pretty big projects going on.
We do. We have some fairly significantly entitled projects. The South Bay Social District comes to mind. There are 300 units entitled there. They would pay that fee when they begin to go vertical. So yeah, there'll be a deposit of some funds down the road. But typically we're generating somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000 a year in Quimby money.
In Quimby money.
Yeah.
And then overall, like each year spending for park projects, what's an average number, or is there a set number each year, like 3 million,
There's
5 million?
not, we're opportunistic. If the funds are there and we've got some exciting projects, we'll add them to the list. Typically, as it pertains to park and recreation activities, the CIP generally has, I would say, somewhere between 10 and 15 projects in some form of design or development. So, I just mentioned 5 or 6 that are under construction now. Once those are closed out, we'll move on to the design of the next list. But yeah, typically we've got about a dozen active Parks and Rec type projects a year.
Yeah, I remember over the years that you guys usually have a lot of projects going on.
Yeah, it's probably too many, but all great things.
Well, Thank you for doing it. You guys do a good job.
Thank you for your support and all of that.
Quick question, just to end the conversation, maybe, of course, you may have time too. Give us an idea of the schedule you guys go through annually, because I kind of want to review the whole thing
For
also.
the budget?
Yeah,
Yeah, so-
it's the annual.
Yeah, so this is kind of our kickoff month. So internally, what's happening right now is our finance department is preparing cost projections for our salary personnel budgets for each of the operating departments, updating those to reflect any changes in benefit costs, or if we've had agreed upon labor adjustment agreements with our various associations, which we have several active agreements that call for raises, perhaps either beginning July 1 or at the start of the calendar year. So each year in our core budget, we add all of those contractual cost obligations, and then we project what that is going to require in terms of total expenditure. Then the departments will look at that. They will look internally at what their current maintenance and operations obligations are, contracts for professional services, purchasing equipment and supplies, et cetera. And in those areas, if they see deficiency, if, as an example, a utility cost, right? We have a water budget for park services. Utility costs have been going up in the last few years for electricity, for water, for natural gas, et cetera. So Public Works will be looking at their budget and saying, okay, well, we don't have much more capacity for the CPUC improved increases. We're going to need to adjust our budget to reflect the current expenditure level. So that is a request that they'll make through my office. We call it a decision package. And they'll say, hey, currently our water budget's $1 million and next year it needs to be 1.1 million. So we need an approved decision package for a $100,000 increase in that appropriation. Every department goes through this exercise. Sometimes they might be asking for things that are need to have, like a utility cost increase. They might be asking for things that are a want to have. I want to add more staff because we could do more things. Or I want to reclassify or reorganize my department to include not 2 technicians, but 2 supervisors. Well, what's the cost of that? So they'll present that to me. They'll make their case, and then I'll assess all of that, and then ultimately I'll deliberate and present to the council those items that I think are most critical for the organization's success. So that's part of our proposed budget that will go to council on this year. I think we'll have it delivered to them on May 16th. And then from there, once I deliver the proposed budget to the council, they begin to deliberate on it. So we'll have a receive and file discussion at the May 21st City Council meeting. The first public hearing where they'll really deliberate on the details of the budget will be held at the first Tuesday in June. The second Tuesday in June is also a budget hearing that's typically focused on our capital program and what we've proposed there. And then the third Tuesday, if all goes well, is the final hearing, and the council will then adopt the budget by motion. Now, typically the council will make modifications to what's been proposed. Sometimes they'll pull money from other resources and add to the list of projects. It just depends on the circumstances. But from there, the budget is adopted and becomes effective July 1st. And then we'll have quarterly review with our Budget Finance Commission. We do a year-end, we have a year-end exercise when we prepare our annual comprehensive financial report, which is really our true up, our full accounting of the prior year expenditures that's audited. We have annual audits, of course, that confirm that those all of the expenditures are calculated and accounted for properly. And then that sets the basis for our mid-year discussion that comes in typically in February, March. This year, we finalized that in early April, and then off to the next budget cycle. So right now, I'm gathering input from all of the commissions. Once the budget's delivered, certain commissions will have an opportunity to review that budget and make recommendations to the council. The Budget and Finance Commission, as an example, the Planning Commission has a charge to evaluate the capital projects to ensure that they have general plan conformity. The Public Works Commission will meet to provide capital project analysis and recommendations to the council. So it just depends on the role and the duties of the commission, but every commission has an opportunity to provide input on what's included in the budget, and that's your opportunity tonight.
Great, thanks for the detail. Yeah, I wanted to make sure. I saw that something was put out on Facebook about a preliminary, and I meant to look at it and I didn't. We have time, so that's good to hear.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll definitely be looking at that in the future. I appreciate that.
I think my questions are around Perry Park Teen Center. I don't know what the status of that is and where we're at.
Yeah, good question. Last year, the council approved some funding to improve the facility. We have money there. We haven't been able to embark on that work just yet. We've been consumed with some of the other projects I mentioned. That is on the to-do list here in the near future. And then once those improvements are made, we hope to activate it with additional youth programming. The Teen Center used to be staffed by an individual program coordinator. The program really consisted of our staff member being available after school hours to meet and greet, teens that would arrive at the center. We had video game consoles, we had, sports equipment, we had cultural activities that were there. And, it was kind of a drop-in kind of hang spot. That program ended with COVID, which shut the teen center down, and we just haven't really rebooted it. The teen population's interests have evolved a bit. They've sort of moved outdoors in a sense. So we're evaluating the best way, I think, to kind of re-energize that space, and it'll probably start with the capital improvement project. So we do have funding for that. It is on the to-do list, and we hope to actually see some movement on that over the course of this summer.
Awesome. Thanks. I went to dances there as a kid, so I love it, right?
Yeah, no, it's got a lot of upside if we activate it properly.
Yeah. And then the other question I had is around Redondo Unified School District, right? Reduced CDC recently for 4th and 5th graders. And I don't know if there's any opportunity to expand
Yeah.
services to maybe help fill that void.
Yeah, good, very astute observation. We have thought the same. We have met, we have a city council, school board subcommittee and staff that meet periodically. That's been a subject of our, it was the subject of our last meeting. The district actually plans to provide an in lieu service for the CDC, I guess, contraction there, if you will. So they've got a program that they're looking to help roll out to offset that need for the community. We've also looked at expanding staffing to ensure that we have an ability to take on more participants at our sites to cover whatever that shortfall might be. So we're in communication with them. I'm sure you've heard from our staff, it's been very difficult to attract rec leaders to support and sustain these programs. It's a really competitive labor market, particularly at the kind of entry-level minimum wage kind of tiering of employment. So we really, I know Michelle and Kelly work really hard to go out and find new employees. We've been doing job fairs. We've been beating the streets. And we've had more success of late, and we've been able to grow the program. So we'll try to do that again this year, but it's a tall order for the most part. But we think it's going to be covered one way or the other.
Okay, thanks.
So one last question, since our agenda is light. So the big picture, how does the budget look this year compared to last year? Like what changes have you seen, like in groups or areas or?
Yeah, good question. I think the biggest change on the revenue side of the equation, that's the fun part, the good part, that's where it kind of starts, is we continue to see year-over-year increases in our total property tax generated. We just are blessed with a very strong housing market, arguably for those who are outside of our housing market, a little bit unaffordable, but for those that are here and can purchase a home, it generates significant property tax for us. So that has been a really strong, steady source of new increased revenue for us, year over year, 3 to 5 to 6%. And is by far the biggest general fund source that we have. Historically, our transient occupancy tax has been a really positive source for us as well, but of late, post-COVID, it's been depressed and a little bit shorter than our peak. We'll slowly see that return. We have it's a complicated lease-back structure. I don't want to go through all the details, but one of our hotel sites, the Marine Avenue properties, there's what's called a site-specific tax pledge that the city entered into years ago to help assist the development of the site. And there's obligations there for us to sequester a portion of our transient occupancy tax when the hotel underperforms and they have profit and loss concerns. During COVID, they had significant profit and loss concerns. They also had subsequent capital improvements that were required by their operating partnerships with the different hotels. So some of that revenue is starting to accrue back. It's repopulating the fund that was set up as part of that structure. We should see that revenue come online in part next year. And then when that's fully captured, we'll be back to, I think, our normal $10.5 million kind of total TOT revenue budget. So that's been a bright spot for us historically. Sales tax has been flat for a few years for us. It's just, we don't have a lot of sales in town until the South Bay Social District renovates. I think we're going to be fairly static in that regard. So we're looking at all those sources. We're finalizing our estimates. We work with third-party consultants to help track some of that data and give us their best professional recommendation on where they think those figures will ultimately land in the upcoming year. So we work with partners on that. And we're usually pretty good about the aggregate number being on point. So I will say our total revenues will be higher next year than they are this year, as they were the last couple of years. But our expenditures are going up as well. I mentioned labor agreements. We have new cost of living adjustments that are scheduled for many of our employees next fiscal year. Again, I mentioned how competitive the labor market is. We routinely study where we are in market, and we try to stay at least at the median level with our comparable cities the best we can. We're not always there. We don't always have the luxury of being able to fund everything we want, but we've been making a concerted effort to try to get our staff back to that level. So I would say generally, if you're just looking for themes, you're going to see some revenue growth in the projected budget, and you're going to see increases in the personnel line item pretty much across the board as well. And the one big thing that's out there this year that we've been benefiting from not having the last 2 years is we are PERS pension. I'm sure you've all heard of, some of the concerns over the years there. Well, the PERS formula, they had a very bad fiscal year a couple fiscal years ago, and it takes a little while for that accounting to flow through our cost. We were one of the astute cities who refinanced all of our pension debt and were able to go out and issue lease revenue bonds at about a 2.7% cost structure versus what we were previously paying to PERS at about 6.75%. So we saved a lot of money in doing that. And we got rid of all of that, what's called unfunded accrued liability. We moved it to basically bond debt, fixed bond debt. Because of their underperformance a couple of years ago now, we've been reassessed, as have all municipalities, another unfunded accrued liability requirement. So we'll have to pay that off now over a period of time. And there are a few ways to do that, but we will have what's called a UAL payment in the next fiscal year that we haven't had the past 2 years. And that's probably going to be about $2 million next year. So that's a new expenditure. To your point, what's a theme? The reintroduction of UAL organization-wide is a bit of a frustration for all of us on the expenditure side. So we'll see personnel costs, we'll see UAL, but we will see some structural revenue growth as well to offset that a bit.
One parting question. What are we calling the Galleria project now?
It's called South Bay Social District.
How's that going? I know they had a few
They
meetings.
are, it's talk about headwinds from a financing perspective. It's a difficult lending market to try to build commercial property of any kind, let alone prior kind of mall-heavy property like the Galleria was. The biggest thing they've got going for them is that they currently have 300 residential units entitled on the site as kind of a phase, a part of the overall project. They have a lender who is carrying a loan with them through the balance of the calendar year, but who, because of the market, has been very austere about blessing full construction lending until they are able to complete certain target of leasing inside the mall when it's renovated, which is very difficult. It used to be you just needed a kind of a leasing strategy and the banks would sign off and say, hey, that looks good, we'll give you the money. Now they want not just letters of intent, but in some instances, actual signed leases. Well, you can imagine a business leasing a futuristic space is not a common thing. You've got to really have strength as that business to be able to wait for a couple of years for your building and space to come online. So that's been difficult for them, but they've actually had success in getting partners in who are committed to the space once it's built. It seems the last hurdle now for the lender to sign off, from what I understand, is this next phase of residential that was contemplated in the original environmental document but wasn't part of the initial application. They have since now applied for that second phase, 350 additional residential units that will be built on what is the southwest side of the site there behind Kohl's, kind of in catty corner to Target in front of living spaces. So they've presented that application, and for them to be successful, they really need that to be a part of the overall project. So we'll see. That'll be next to Planning Commission.
Yeah. I did have another question, though, about the accessibility of all of our parks. Have we done any studies to evaluate the accessibility of our parks?
We did an overall ADA study a few years back, and I believe it included our parks. We haven't, I don't know if we've studied parks specifically from that regard. Every time we build a new structure at a park, we consider ADA, of course. I mean, all of our place equipment surfacing, path of travel, we're always very mindful of that, our restrooms. But it's been a while, I think, since we've commissioned a formal study there. But anytime there's a concern raised, we tend to address it.
Yeah.
So.
I just think it'd be nice to, especially with the Friendship, was it the Friendship Campus?
Campus is
Yeah,
coming.
going in, right, and considering accessibility across the entire city for the parks and the residents there in the areas.
Yeah, and I think there's partnership eventually with the Friendship Foundation there as it pertains to utilization of Franklin facilities and egress, ingress and the like. So, yeah, we've had, I think that's going to be a great site when it's built, so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mike, the power plant's coming down. Do we have a timeline on that at all? Any information?
So two things on that front. So the power plant is shut down,
Right?
but in terms of dismantling the power plant, that's another,
Yeah.
that's not certain. That, as to when, how, by whom, that's still a little bit up in the air.
How would it go? Like, would the power lines go down first or would the power plant go down first?
There's a couple of outcomes there. And the power lines, technically, there's two sets of power lines. There's the big tall ones, the 220 kV lines that are the transmission lines. They don't distribute power at a sub-regional level in any way. They just are part of the major grid. They bring power. The grid is connected through lines that come west, hit the AES power plant substation, and then turn around. It's a switch and turn around and go east. And the reason that they even connect to that location is because at one point power was being generated from that campus. It was being added to the grid through that connection to that substation. They're offline. There's no power being generated there. So those lines are redundant in that sense. However, removal of those lines would require one of two things. There's an agreement, a facility services agreement that's still in place between the AES site and Edison. So that has to be terminated first, right? And that they're just not there yet in terms of their legalese and the finalization of that property disposition. So that agreement's still in place. So technically Edison can't take the lines down as of yet. But then secondarily, Edison would need to relocate that switch, that turnaround, somewhere upstream. They can take it to the LaFresia substation. We know they can do it there. They could effectively take all of those towers down and run that conversion for the grid all the way back to the LaFresia substation. But to do that, they're going to need to understand, who's paying for it, and then are they truly able to decouple from the power plant side? So there's kind of two dominoes that need to fall for that to happen. We're pushing as hard as we can on those dominoes, but we're not the ultimate arbiter.
But at some point in the future, several years, maybe longer, the power lines probably are coming down?
I certainly hope so. I mean, that's a plan. There are circumstances and scenarios with both outcomes where they continue to remain for the foreseeable future or they are removed and they disappear from our skyline.
And then the next part of that would be, let's imagine that they are down.
Mm-hmm.
Then the land underneath, is that owned by,
It's owned by Edison.
It's owned by
SoCal
Edison.
yeah.
and then is there any, or how would the city get the land? And then, if possible, use the land for adding parks?
Yeah, so great question. So you might know this, the portion of the easement area that's immediately west of Pacific Coast Highway, between the power plant, right between Francisca and Pacific Coast Highway.
The big hill going down?
Big hill down, right? There's a couple of big towers there. It's right by the fountain. It's just west of the fountain. That is property we actually have last couple of years, licensed from Edison for use by the city to turn into kind of just a natural open space area that can be accessed by the public with sort of native plant material, et cetera. We're working on building that park-like space where we're going through back and forth rounds of approvals with Edison. They're always reluctant to have anything kind of planted in their maintenance area, but we're making progress. So at some point, that space will be activated for at least passive open space purposes, with some DG pathways and some other things, so people can actually be on that site and enjoy the view and,
Instead of just a dirt slope that.
Yeah, exactly.
been for a long
And I
time.
think we have funding to really beautify the upper portion of that site. We don't have funding to plant the entire 5 acre area, but we have money to handle the kind of eastern side of it. So to your point, historically, Edison will give us property on 5-year lease increments, or I should call it license increments. But if the transmission corridor went away, conceivably that would allow for them to dispose of the property differently. So we haven't crossed that bridge yet. We don't know. I mentioned the 220 kV lines. There is still the obligation for Edison to have access to that transmission corridor for the delivery of 66 kV power, which is what actually reaches our regional grid and is what provides all of our homes power. So the 66 lines, which are kind of the single poles with like kind of the 3 prongs, not the big giant towers. The smaller ones, yeah, that still has to go at least to Prospect. And then it can turn south to down Prospect to the Nob Hill station. But those lines are important.
So in the scenario of the power poles come down and the land becomes available, is Edison obliged to like go to the city first, or can they sell that land in the open market?
There's a few different factors there. I think you could argue, I believe there's a government agency disposition tiering for some of these purposes, but it depends on what they're marketing the property for. And so we might have, in a sense, a bit of a kind of right of first refusal, but it depends on what they're pricing it at, what they're allowed to do. All good questions, but I think realistically for them I can't see them letting go of that property really anytime soon. I mean, it has significant.
Are we 5 years or longer, you think?
I think probably longer than that. I mean, is there a possibility that the transmission corridor could be taken down or at least partially dismantled inside of 5 years? There is that possibility.
Right.
I mean, if all goes exceedingly well, we could see it down in a couple of years, but I don't want to get everybody's hopes up.
No, well, everything takes, the whole process with
Yeah.
the power plant has taken so long just to get to
It
this
does.
point.
And,
It's like,
yeah.
it's-
And then to your earlier question about the power plant facility itself,
God,
the
I can imagine.
dismantling of that's a completely separate equation.
Yeah.
It's going to depend on who owns the property, what they're attempting to do, what they're allowed to do with the space. So a lot of questions there that are going to have to be answered over the next couple of years.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question.
I have a couple of suggestions to add to the budget.
Sure.
I think the first one would be for pickleball.
Okay.
So I know we have the aviation park CAP, it's unfunded.
Yeah.
So what's the process to get that funded?
Well, that feasibility study showed that building pickleball courts behind the gymnasium was at least a $650,000 proposition. That estimate now is several years old. So knowing the way construction pricing has gone, it's probably well into the 7 figures in final execution. So we'd have to identify a funding source. Council would actually have to be committed to spending that money and executing that project. That has been quite been a lot of discourse around exactly what to do with that parcel there and whether or not to build a pickleball facility. So there's some challenges to that location. You know, it's the northernmost quadrant of the campus, the park campus. You would think in looking at it, oh, hey, that parking that's around there is actually, could easily be used to support whatever facilities built there. That's technically Northrop Grumman property, or in some cases leased property. There's access issues to that space. Members of the public can't just use that lot to walk to any kind of a recreational purpose at that site. So, which means you have to access the property from our side, by the Performing Arts Center, and you got to, mentioning path of travel, you got to have a path of travel to get there. So there's some other things that have to happen. It's not as easy a project as you would think. And so those are things that we would have to grapple with. We'd have to find the money, and there'd have to be a commitment to executing the project.
Okay. And what about some of the smaller things like the fence at Perry Park and the dual striping at Alta Vista, some of those items?
Yeah, no, that's very much in motion. There's an item coming back in May to the council to talk about some of those other pickleball solutions, right? Temporary expansion of temporary courts. We're in the process of actually adding a court at Dale Page Park. I don't know if you've seen some of the work that's happening there. Public Works, Mike's here, is been working on that. So we're going to have a basketball court there and a pickleball court for drop-in use. So we're adding to our inventory, but we're doing it fairly carefully and where it makes sense and it's not obtrusive to the neighbors and where there's good balance of use. And so, yeah, those are in motion. I think we've dual striped the courts at Perry. They're very active. I'm sure you've seen them. They're very busy. I think we have a single court at Franklin right now that's actually working out quite well. It's very, very regularly used. There's a potential maybe to even activate another pad there for temporary pickleball. So working on it, but haven't yet quite figured out if or where the council would like to see a more of an aggregated facility. So it's, we have some park and rec and open space money, but we don't have infinite money, and there are a lot of calls for that expense.
Yeah, and I think the Alta Vista one was the one that is up for debate.
That's the most recent conversation, and that's where the debate first started, is whether or not to maybe temporarily stripe a couple of the tennis courts and try that out. So the council's going to be kicking that around again here in May.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other area I was looking at would be to expand the programs and classes that we offer. And I know that we're going through a process of doing some kind of vendor agreement, and then hopefully once that is in place, then we could begin to offer more classes. But I guess my question would be, do we have enough resources and staff resources to handle that? Because I think were the resources cut during COVID and then not replaced?
They were. We've slowly started to rebuild those resources. In fact, we just hired a new program coordinator that's going to be dedicated to our senior and family services programming. I think she's now on board. So that's class activation, class expansion is an area that we're looking at. Our senior centers they're underutilized right now. We haven't fully built back the activities that used to be provided by the senior clubs. So there might be some opportunity to maybe activate that space at times that it's not currently used. We added three full-time program coordinators to the budget this fiscal year, didn't we? Converted at least 2. And then, so I think we added 3 dedicated staff members, which really it will be their charge, depending on whether it's youth programming or senior programming, but it'll be focused on expanding those activities that were cut largely during COVID. So It's in motion. There's definitely some eagerness to see it done.
Yeah, so for budget purposes, if we could give you
I think
money
we're
in there.
okay right now on staffing. It's just implementing some of these initiatives that we're kind of waiting on.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yeah.
Do we get to hear from Mike tonight?
I think he's here for the next item, right?
Excellent.
Yeah.
I was hoping to have you up here. No, can you come back next year?
I will certainly, yes, I
We
would love
needed this.
to.
We needed to hear the larger picture, big budget, confusing accounting terms. We like that.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No,
The Gatsby speak, it's a little,
No, I got a finance degree. It's
Gibberishy.
good. I
Yeah.
understood that. I wasn't quite tuned in, but I understood it. But thanks for your time. Appreciate
well,
it.
listen, thank you all. Appreciate all your work and never easy to volunteer in these capacities.
For sure.
Vice Chair, before we close this item, we do have one e-comment. Just for the record, just want to mention that that's there. And we haven't officially done public comment, so just want to make sure there's no one online or in the audience
Oh,
to
thank you
speak
very
on.
much. Yeah.
Currently, we don't have anyone online.
Great. Okay.
Do we have any comment? Yes?
Yeah, and they did have some good recommendations in the e-comment around talking, bike paths to the parks and making it easier, especially like Alta Vista again, where we're having a lot of conversation about parking and availability of parking. And then the photography licensing in our parks, both Veterans Park, they mentioned Wilderness Park, but I think Veterans Park is another one where you likely see a lot of, professional photographers coming to utilize it for their wedding photos and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I think that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, we're getting close. Actually, we've selected a vendor to negotiate with for the concessionaire agreement to activate the Veterans Park Library building, which should help with some of that. We're actually going to be talking about that in negotiations and closed sessions next week with the council. So we're starting to advance that arrangement. So I've got a couple notes here from all of the comments, and let me add that.
Thank you.
Do we normally read out the e-comments during the meeting, or Don't.
No, the commission decided several months ago not to read it unless you
Yeah.
ask us to
Yeah, I think we
specifically.
did. Yeah, I think we did not want to, because it may be too many sometimes, so.
Yeah.
And not to read them out by form, but unless there's a comment that you all want to make.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank
Thank
you
you so
all
much.
very much.
Thank you,
Have a
Mike.
good night. Enjoy the-
Terrific, terrific. Moving on, let's see, we are at what now? Are we at the J2? Are we still, let's see, that was J1, that was our budget. And we've got J2, which last month we had a really good presentation by, what was her name again?
Vicki Callahan.
Vicki gave us a great breakdown on the doggy park problems, and I think all of us were concerned about that. It's safety, it's health, it's sanitation, it's all the above. And we're going to definitely be looking at that in depth, but what's the action here tonight?
Sure. So tonight it's to receive and file some updates. So I did invite our Public Works Superintendent, Mike Klein, here this evening. I'll provide just a really brief overview on the information in the the admin report, and then I'll turn it over to any questions you may have. And of course, Mike is here. He's really the boots on the ground with this, so he's really the subject matter expert. So I hope I don't butcher some of the responses here. Mike will be able to correct me, though, if I do. But yes, Vice Chair, as you mentioned, Ms. Callahan came as a public comment last meeting with a number of concerns that she has experienced related to the Dominguez Park Dog Park. You all requested us to return with some responsive information on that, so that's what we're here tonight to do. I'm just going to briefly go through each of her concerns and just respond with some general information. Again, we'll turn that back over to Public Works for more further clarification. The first one is that the water stations, that they are continually clogged. The way that those were installed is that the drain lines were essentially built to percolate into the ground. They were not directly connected to the sewer lines. And so because of that installation, there is going to be more clogging than if they were put directly into the sewer lines. In order to do that, it would require extensive work, a lot of money to fund that type of a project. There's also some infrastructure concerns that because the park is built on the former dump site, there is still some compaction and shifting of the ground that if you install any pipes, there's a potential that there could be damage to the pipes because of the shifting. So as of right now, there is no project scheduled to fix or remedy this. Public Works has looked to see if there's some some fountains or water stations, I should say, that could replace the existing system, but also be compatible with the drainage component, just to see if that would help fix. And there really isn't anything that would essentially fix the issue. So with the coyotes, there was a concern that the fencing on the exterior of the park was too low and that coyotes are able to enter into the park by going over the fence, as well as some dogs inside the park were able to exit the park. The fencing at the park was recently replaced within the past few years, and it was replaced like for like, so we did not raise or lower the fence from what it was prior. And that was also done in coordination with the Friends of the Redondo Beach Dog Park Group. We do have a representative here this evening, which you all likely know, Mr. Gil Escontrias. And so if there's any questions related to that, him and his team with that nonprofit organization really tag team a lot of efforts at that location and put a lot of sweat and time into there to really keep it functioning and assist the city in making sure that it's safe and a good location for all of the residents and the dogs. And so just want to mention that the fencing itself was done in coordination with them, so it wasn't just a single decision made by the city. The third concern was the fact that there's continually homeless throughout the parks. Unfortunately, that's not something Public Works can speak to tonight, but as we continue to recommend, if there is any concern with any homeless or even frankly any individual in the park, to please call the non-emergency dispatch number and the police services can respond as appropriate. The next issue is that there's some drainage issues throughout the park. The Public Works team, as well as the Friends of the Redondo Beach Dog Park, continually grade areas on a regular basis that may need it. They are constantly visually inspecting the park to make sure that there isn't a lot of signs of erosion in certain areas and fill where it's needed. So that is something that is on kind of the regular ongoing upkeep of the park for both groups, the city and the nonprofit organization. And then the final one is that the city uses herbicide throughout the park. Do you want to confirm that while the city does use herbicide, it does in a very, it's a less, can't think of the proper term, but it's a separate product than what everyone refers to or knows as the Roundup. It's a little bit more environmentally friendly, but it is still considered an herbicide. The city does use it in conformance with an annual permit that is obtained from the LA County Agricultural Commissioner. And as part of that, there are certain restrictions and guidelines on how that herbicide can be applied. And so the city is not just going out and randomly spraying. It's controlled. It's done by someone who has been instructed on how to properly do that and safely in all of the parks. I'm not going to get into a lot of the specifics of that product. It does, in our report, it does kind of outline certain things about it, that such as it includes ammonia in it, so it does typically dry quicker than products that without, so hopefully there's not as much residue left behind. Mike is probably going to be much more astute to speak to that, but there is some additional technical information on that herbicide in the report. And so that does conclude kind of just a brief overview of the concerns that were addressed and then how the city has responded and does recommend responding to the issues that were outlined. So with that, I will turn it over to our superintendent in case he has anything to add or correct that I misspoke. Oh, I said superintendent, didn't I? I apologize, Deputy Director, excuse me.
Good evening, everyone. How are you today? My name is Mike Klein. I'm the Deputy Director. I oversee operations for the city. It was interesting to hear the budget discussion before because my job lately has been primarily on Parks and Recs projects. Everything from re-rubberizing surfaces last year to building baseball diamonds or putting on backstops. We also took part in the community garden. Basically hands-on working with Parkland Conservancy. Right now that we're in the middle of roof projects all the way through the city using funding from SBDG money. So we just put a new one on at Alta Vista and also at Wilderness Park. But then I get to work also on the dog park. Over the past couple of years, we took on the project to improve the dog park. Working with Friends of the Dog Park, and especially this gentleman right back here, we got to work together on a lot of things. And so there's been a lot of concerns that we had. The fencing was falling down. There was no place to sit that was really comfortable. The natural flowing of water throughout the park. And I wanted to touch base on a couple of things that we were given the gift of a dog park that was built on top of a dump. Well, when dumps start to deteriorate, they start to fall. And so the drinking fountains alone had some issues of drainage back. I came to the city 18 years ago, and they were having issues with drainage. We were constantly having to unplug lines, undo stuff. Undo clogs, mostly due to dirt that was in the property. We dig them up, try to clean them out, but what was happening was that slowly, as the dump is starting to recede, it is getting off balance a little bit. And so water doesn't flow downhill, or water does flow downhill, it doesn't, and so that's part of the problem. This morning, Gil and I had taken a look at a couple issues down at the southern end of the park where we have some drainage issues for water flow. We also took a look at one of the drinking fountains, and he was showing me some of the problems that we're having. We're going to be working on that over the next couple of weeks. What we want to do is take And part of the problem is that the water dish that's on the bottom is almost level with the dirt. So what happens is that the dogs are running up and they're having a blast and having a fun time, and they run up and they kick dirt around and people kick dirt around, and the dirt does flow into the drain, clogs it up, and so it becomes a mess. Then that water leaches down, and then part of the drainage that we have. So these are some of the problems that we have right now. The Southern California Gas Company is working on their project right now for the new plugging station. So far, from what I've heard, everything is going as planned. They are planning on doing a couple of improvements, working with the Friends of the Dog Park. So that's going to be something that they're going to be working with them and us on when that comes about. But we do have some plans on the drainage on the park. Starting next week, a little bit of dirt work and some demolition of the old water station for the dogs will be done. And we're going to take that one out and try to rebuild it up a little bit taller so it's up and out of the dirt. So that's going to be one of the things that we do. The fencing around the park, we did build that. That was a replacement fence. It was a takedown and replacement. When I heard about this report about coyotes in the park, that was the first time that I had heard about coyotes. I know we have coyotes in a lot of other places. It's a huge concern, but it had never been really brought to our attention that we had dogs in the park. So with that, we replaced the fence as is, and we did that in sections, in phases, so I wasn't taking down and shutting down the whole park for a month. And so what we did is that we took down and replaced fencing as we went along. We completed most of the work. There's still one section that I'd like to get to, and that will probably happen over the next year or so, but it's on the back portion where the gas company is at. On the east wall, on the north side of the park, down in the lower park that parallels 190th. So that's one of the things that we'd like to do. Working with Friends of the Dog Park, we had never really ever discussed it would become a little bit obtrusive for visual to people to look over the fence. It's a very comfortable look right now. Have dogs jumped over the fence? I can't tell you. I've run my dogs around quite a bit, and they're usually playing with each other, and so it hasn't. I use a dog park too, so and it is just something that we haven't ever. We hadn't planned. This was a job for replacing like for like, and replacing some of the rotted out poles and things like that, improving the gate entries. Before they were just kind of kicked around. My crews poured concrete. We worked with Gil in making sure that we had the dog vestibules as you come in the first gate, unleash your dog, and then go to the second gate and get in there. We ended up working on the very southern end, putting one in for the training area that's down there so that we had some separate entrance issues if you had some larger dogs or more active dogs. So the partnership between the Friends of the Dog Park, I think, has worked out pretty well. I'm sure Gil will probably beat me up somehow, but Gil's been very, very good to work with, and down to today, talking about signage, things that they need. We're trying to work with them quite a bit. The homeless issue, like Kelly said, it's not something that we control. That is the police department. They do need to, we do have a homeless population that is everywhere. For a long period of time with the parking lot, the way that it is with the local apartments, that is basically parking for a lot of the apartment residents that are across the street. That did allow a lot of people that had their campers and things like that to park there. PD is well aware of it, but they've been working, trying to make sure that some of the folks that are there, some of them were doing mechanical work on their cars and things like that. They're trying to make sure that doesn't happen too often, and that's really something that the police department would have to do. Herbicide. The herbicide dilemma that we've had over the years is that when the use of Roundup was hitting the news, a lot of debate on that, on the question of how potent it was. The city had asked us through council to take a look at this. We ended up, the different types of product that are out there for weed control. The largest part that the city, that my staff has, is that when, especially during the springtime, right now, weeds are growing rampant. But the one thing that when we eliminated Roundup out of our inventory of materials, we went to a different type of material called Cheetah Pro. And Cheetah Pro is still an herbicide. It's, and I don't want to butcher the name of it, but I will try. Glufosinate ammonium. Okay, the ammonium in it helps it dry out a little bit quicker. Our staff has an LA County permit for pesticides. We have to make sure that we apply it in the proper way. We do not even use this inside the dog park. This is not used between my staff and the Friends of the Dog Park and some of the partnerships that Gil has brought up with some of the folks that work at the park just to help out. It's been a very good workout, I think, for everybody. But we still have weed control that we have to do throughout our parks. But we do it in a proper way. And that is, if one of our parks maintenance guys is out spraying this type of material, the Cheetah Pro, we have to make sure that nobody walks into the area until it dries. These are exactly the instructions and the process that we have to go by, and we make sure that we do that. We watch what we use in our parks. And so we want to make sure that we're doing the proper thing. We do not want people to get sick. We don't want animals to get sick. Animal owner here. And so I'm one of those also that want to watch out for that. But we don't do that in a careless manner. So with that, between weed whackers and now that we're getting our leaf blowers back, hopefully we'll be able to keep up with a lot more stuff. But we still have to use weed control in some fashion. Any other questions?
Did you touch drainage yet? You might have skipped drainage.
No.
Or did we hit that?
Yeah.
We did, okay, I apologize.
Mike, when's the gas company finished there? Is that the gas company is working there?
Mm-hmm.
When are they supposed to be done?
Depending upon their schedule and their plugging schedule. Last I heard it was September.
I was going to say, I believe it's early fall, but
Yeah.
if it needs to be extended for whatever delays they have, I believe till the end of December, potentially.
And they're going to help fix up where they are when they leave. They'll make it right, and that's all agreed to.
Yes, sir.
They're pretty good.
Gas company has been very good to work with. The contracting company that they've been using, they were the first ones that built the structure down there. They do a very good job. We try to make sure that they follow through. Gas company wants to be good neighbors.
All right.
And this is a lot better than having 190th all torn up for 4 months.
Yeah.
So this has been a huge advantage. The dog park, I think will benefit from it. It's a small section. They only have to do this every 3 years. This is an examination of all the transportation, the transport pipelines that are underneath there. They insert a plug. This plugging device is the best way that I can say, that examines the pipe as it goes down. And what it also does, that I found out recently, is that it also cleans debris that gets into that pipeline, which I didn't know happened. And so it basically sweeps up as it goes along, and it carries up. And it's better for the process, better for the pipe that's underground. This plugging station that they're shooting from is all the way up in Marina Del Rey. The Marina Del Rey station sends it our way, and then they come back and we receive it our gas company receives it at the dog park. Then they take that same device and they put it at another station on the other side. And I don't recall the location of that, but when they do that, then they shoot it the other way and they receive it again. So it does, and it's examining, and it examines the pipelines to make sure that their structural integrity is there.
Cool.
Okay.
On the coyotes, I heard you say it sounds like there's not really much that we can do about that. Is that kind of, I may have missed, it's.
On the coyotes, our animal enforcement team from, again, kind of a little bit of a police enforcement issue with their animal control. They've been the ones that have been trying to control this. When it was kind of rampant going on, probably about a year and a half ago through Torrance. There's a huge upheaval in Torrance about the coyotes. They have a lot more receiving basins. I know, I live near Bishop Montgomery, and I used to see the coyotes run by all the time. And so they had very good foraging places to stay. We have Wilderness Park, which every so often one will bed down there, and they're transitory animals because they will go from place to place. And so they may be in Torrance one day and maybe running through Redondo the next day. We have had them at Wiley some, and we know because we were clearing brush away and two of them ran out and they took off and they probably went into Manhattan Beach someplace. So it is something, it is wildlife. We have to be careful like everything else. And Dominguez Park is a very good hiding place. We're in a lot of places for it. And so we want to make sure that our animals are safe. But the fencing issue, to be honest with you, they have climbed fences at Wilderness Park that are almost, I would say, 8 feet tall. So there's a lot of things to that, and frankly, the sightings of them just haven't been that rampant around the dog park that I know of. I'm not saying that it hasn't happened. Gil may be able to comment on that a little bit further, but that's one of the things that we're running up against.
I was wondering if we might consider something like a coyote fencing, like roller fencing or something at the top to help minimize if it becomes an issue in the future. I know when I lived in New Mexico, we had to have coyote fencing a lot to help keep them down.
Yeah, and then I run into what does it look like and why did you, are we building a prison or anything like that? So it's part of the aesthetics of the park is to keep it somewhat low and to keep it so that the visual is there because a lot of people like to watch the dogs from the outside. So we tried to keep it and really working with the Friends of the Dog Park. You have great volunteers there that have been there all the time. And it's something that when we come in and we re-fence, it really wasn't even a consideration because we hadn't had any kind of activity like that really was concerning.
Makes sense.
I'm not saying that it's not a concern. Everybody does still need to keep track of their pets and things like that. And if you do see a coyote running through the park, you go out and you call animal control, call 911. They'll get the animal control. By the time that animal control officer, that coyote may be gone into Torrance, into one of the Torrance sumps,
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Great, Mike, appreciate it. Yeah, coyotes are on the Greenway too, by the way, but they're rare. It's usually dark. But they're there. They're generally probably just pass through. We don't see them very often. But thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Any other? Okay.
To give Mike props, Mike's helped me with coyotes. He's helped me with sprinklers. Mike is very responsive. If I call Mike, he'll get something done like the next day, if not earlier. So thank you, Mike. Very responsive.
It's a fun job.
Yeah.
I get to work with a lot of people, so this has been a great place for me.
Oh, great. Good to hear it.
Awesome.
And we get to play in parks, so.
There you go.
Thanks for your work.
Thank you, Mike.
I believe Mr. Escontrias, I may have a few comments if we can.
All
Give him-
right, Gil. Hey, Gil.
Good evening. My name is Gil Escontrias, and I am the president of the Friends of the Redondo Beach Dog Park, which is the nonprofit that works in partnership with the city of Redondo Beach in the maintenance of the interior of the dog park. We basically run that, Okay. For GWIS information, I have been a volunteer there for well over 25 years. For the past probably 6 years, a little bit more of a hands-on, where every Wednesday I am there, sometimes with them as well, mowing the lawn, cutting, doing, and fixing. Okay. I kind of bring this up in a sense to understand is that when somebody has a complaint or a concern, we ideally would like them to call us first so that we can explain to them the do's and the don'ts. Like we get people every other week and it works in cycles of how they're going to tell us how they're going to improve it. Okay. And unfortunately, they don't understand is that one, we are under city constraints, we are under Edison constraints, and now we have the gas company, some of the constraints, as well as financial constraints. Okay, we're a nonprofit, and probably for my first 15 years there, we had no funding, all of our own pocket. For a long time, up until probably a couple of years ago, we didn't have too much funding as well, that most of our people paid for the irrigation and stuff like that. And I think a little bit of that was because of the lack of communication between the city and us. And the previous administration kind of, in a sense, refused to work with us. Another GWIS information, I've been a dog trainer for 45 years. I'm a military trained dog trainer. I'm currently the president and founder of a therapy dog organization that provides service dogs and therapy dogs to first responders in the military. For about 15 years, I was a dog trainer vendor, if you will, at the dog park. So every Saturday morning for 15 years, I was doing dog training as a vendor, such. Okay. So as to some of the issues, okay, being there as much as I can, or as much as I try not to be, or try sometimes not to be, in seeing what goes on there. And the interesting thing about the dog park is that the dynamics of the dog park changes within every hour between good people, good dogs, bad dogs. Okay, and so it kind of goes through with that. As far as, let's go, I guess we can start off first with the fencing. Okay, Canis lupus, Canis familiaris, Canis latrans, the coyote, can jump anywhere from 5 to 8, 9 feet tall. So we can put a 20-foot fence and a dog will be able to climb over. I've trained dogs to do it. I know we can do it. We cannot please everybody. I get it. It'd probably be a little cost prohibitive. Along the same lines, I have not had any, because again, I run our website where people can call us, people can email us with questions 24 hours a day as far as how the dog park works and how it doesn't work and whatever and such. No one came to us and said they have a documented case where they have actually seen a coyote there. Okay, as a retired police officer, I believe in facts. Show it to me. Now, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Okay, but I'm saying is that also in light of that, not only today, but in the past few days after getting the information, that whole hill that goes off the dog park on the front side off of 190th is generally a place where a den would be. I walked the whole thing. Well, I walked most of it and I felt a couple of spots. Okay, there's no dens up in that area. Okay, so if that's the case, then that's also going to be a factor that's going to be based on the foliage and stuff like how it's going to do that. So I'm not saying there isn't. I'm not saying that there wouldn't be. But at the same time, there's a responsibility of each person who takes their dog there to be cognizant of what is going on. That if a coyote were to jump over, which would more likely be the small dog side, which is probably more on that side, that they would be aware to be able to shoo them off or whatever else to do that. And again, if that becomes an issue, then I think we should deal with it when it becomes an issue at that side, okay? The other side, again, is the drainage. I recall about during COVID, we dug up some of the drainage into putting cleanouts, which just means that because of the way the dirt is, it gets stuck in there where the dogs go in there. And so we clean it out periodically. I know because I do it. So sometimes there's an issue, and again, sometimes we can't get to things like right away, and sometimes we don't know. Even though I'm there, I don't run the water all the time. So again, we try to do what we can with what we have when somebody tells us there's a maintenance issue. Sometimes they can get to it, a lot of times they can't. We have to have a balance between the volunteers and the city. Because if we start taking, like for a long time, I bought myself a lawnmower, I would ride a lawnmower that I drag the place with. Okay, but that can also mow. But if I start mowing too much, what's going to happen is his city guy, who's a lawnmower guy, is going to be out of a job. Okay, so that's why we don't do a lot of it. So there's a balance between that we try to do. Same with the weed whacking and the weed abatement, generally is with the shovel now that we do a lot more. Okay. I believe that lately, probably in the past year or so, that the park has not looked any better than it ever has. Okay. We have a team of volunteers who come in 5 days a week and rake and sweep the entrance to the dog park. They rake and they sweep every bench that's out there. And we talked about ADA. Although we are not ADA compliant, we are ADA aware. And if you look at next to each of the, or most of the benches, we have put cement pads, or they put cement pads in, so that, because as we went there one day, the gentleman was trying to get in there with his wheelchair, and it didn't go that well. So we said, let's deal with this. So we're looking for things of how to make it better for the people who utilize it as much as possible, okay? So we do look at the drainage. We're gonna try, again, like today, we're gonna, probably next Wednesday, we're gonna build more stuff to address that issue. The other thing is I'd like to say is that we're also invested in more in our community as well, okay? Last month, we sponsored a vaccination clinic. We paid for 25 free vaccinations for the first 100 people that showed up. We paid for 25 people showed up that we did. We were offering it to the first 100 people in the area for free vaccinations, free chips, free rabies and parvo shots. We did it about 6 months ago as well, for free. And we will do it again in the summer, probably up to 100 people for free. Okay, we've got a couple of benefactors who kind of help us out, and we are involved in our community. So let's see, there was anything else that was popped up on this that we can address?
Did you address the herbicide? I think we've already heard about.
Yeah, the herbicide, that's them.
Yeah.
For me, the herbicide is abatement is a shovel. Okay. The biggest thing, also the homeless issue. When I'm there, if I see a homeless who's trying to entrench himself a little bit, I will always call, because there's an issue, especially when they're right behind the firing range. I think that's the only place, any other place I'm not aware of where they're at, because we also have a container there as well where we keep our stuff at as much as possible. We are looking to, we actually did redo part of the dog park into a agility field, or an obstacle course, and we are looking to expand possibly to developing 2 areas in which people that have dogs that do not get along with other dogs, overly aggressive dogs, can run, frolic, and do whatever on their own in an area that's pretty big. So we're looking at how that works. I mean, how we want to work with people. But I think the biggest thing is the responsibility that each of the persons who own a dog, that they get there, they look at their dog. Now, they talked about jumping over the fence. I know there was a guy, I used to watch him every other day. He would send his dog to jump over the fence because he would purposely throw the ball over. My view was that he was just trying to impress everybody as how much his dog can jump over the fence. Okay. But I wasn't impressed. Okay. The biggest thing with that is that they're in control of their dogs. We did have the issues prior with dogs climbing under the fence or places that need to be repaired, but that's been mitigated by the new fencing. Okay. So, and if there is any issues, because we generally do walk the fence line on Wednesdays to see if there's any issues that need to be fixed. Anything that we can look at on the fence, like in the gates, it has to be fixed. If anything, I'm on speed dial, and I'm sure he grimaces every time he sees me. Oh crap, what's going on now? But again, I am also aware that there are things that the city cannot do because of funding or because of restrictions and things like that, and we're open to that. The biggest thing that we're having is communication, and again, quite frankly, that we did not have with the previous administration. By far. And in fact, I'll put to you this way, that is why I was a parks commissioner, it was because of lack of communication between the city and the dog park. Do you have any questions about what we do, what we don't do, where we're going?
You mentioned the structure clean out. Is that,
Yes.
what is that exactly? I don't know.
Well, okay, I'm not a plumber, although I pretend to be one. When the pipes come out, okay, usually within a distance, what you have is a different type of pipe that comes in where you can open the top up, put a snake in there, a metal piece and drain it out and clean out so that the flow goes through.
Okay, gotcha.
So we snake it when we can.
Yeah.
And so, but it's far enough away that it becomes, because a lot of that is more the dirt than it is anything else. And once we kind of loosen it, it's no different than a toilet plunger. just a different way of getting into the pipe. Fast, and actually the most efficient and effective way of getting into the pipe.
What's a good time I might come out and see you. What's a good time you're out there? Like, what?
Wednesdays usually from 8 to 12.
Okay, I'll come by.
Okay, and then depending on, like I know next week we are going to be doing the modifications of the water. And again, we've had people come in, try to tell us how, you can do this, you can do that, but, or put grass down. We've experimented with mulch, and that worked for a while. We're trying to put more dirt in now, and then again, depending on how the dirt comes in. That's why also when they talked about rocks and things like that, we have buckets. And I don't want to sound real flippant about this, but we get a lot of people tell us, hey, there's a bunch of rocks there. And we'll say, well, there's a bucket, pick it up. Okay, and everybody wants to tell us what to do, but nobody wants to come out and help us. Okay, like I said, we do have a group of volunteers right now that are really good. And in fact, we awarded one of them the Presidential Points of Light for the 200 hours of volunteerism that he's involved with. It's an organization that has developmentally disabled people who teaching them skills and work skills, as well as working in an environment like that. And they do very well. Like I said, the park has not looked this good in a long time. And they sweep it, they rake it every day, 5 days a week. Anything else? Questions?
By the way, we're
Yes, sir.
probably gonna award those two folks their awards next month, we hope, here in this meeting. So, did we get the awards yet?
I did. I was going to share them as the director's report,
Oh,
yes.
surprise! So we've got these for next month, and I'll let you know, and we'll invite them over. You can come out.
Yeah,
And,
we gave them also, those
big
same
part
two
of that.
volunteers,
Good.
Lifetime Achievement Awards for the Presidential Points of Light. The Redondo Beach Dog Park is a certifying agency for volunteers who perform community volunteerism, where the president signs a certificate suitable for framing concerning the number of hours, anywhere from 2, 3, 4, and then a lifetime achievement.
Right.
And so we're open to that as well. So if you come across anybody who is a volunteer who would like that, we can facilitate that for you.
Sounds good. Thanks for coming in today.
Questions, concerns?
All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Gil.
Vice Chair, if I may, I just want to make sure that we don't have any public comment online or any comments that came in. Okay, so we don't have any this evening.
This was a good meeting to come to after all. Glad I showed up late.
So we do need a motion to receive and file the report.
I'll make a motion to receive and file the report.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moving along, that was wonderful. We just received J2, received the report. We're moving on to the subcommittee review, J3. We have a number of subcommittees, so I'll let Kelly run down the list and we can report on those.
Yeah, so this is just our standing item. It's an opportunity for any active subcommittee to provide an update to the commission on any work that's been done since our last meeting. I'll just briefly go through. We have our facility user subcommittee, park ranger subcommittee, our volunteer acknowledgement program subcommittee, and our pickleball subcommittee. So with that, I will turn it over to any commissioner who may have an update.
I can speak for the Facilities Committee. Our last commission meeting, we were discussing possibly creating a letter for the commission. And we're in the researching that and writing that, but it's not complete yet. So we'll bring that forward at a later date. We did, however, we should have shared the little article about the park.
Oh, I can share that via email
yeah, maybe
after the
just-
meeting. Yeah, I can
yeah.
distribute that.
We found some good information about Alta Vista Park. An article that was written, I think, in 1985 or 95, and had a good history of the park, how the park was formed and the land and all that. And so it does refer to an agreement, a lease agreement with the city and the school district as well. So we're kind of trying to, if that is the case, does that lease exist or did it exist? And if so, where is it? Or could we get a hold of it? So that's kind of, we're going to look into and see. But the history of the park was quite interesting because it was built like in 1960, I think early 60s, and then finalized in like 1970, I believe. So that's where we are. We haven't made any, our next meeting probably won't be till about August, so we're still kind of in between. That's that.
Thank you very much.
For the park ranger, I think we're still waiting to have a meeting, right?
Yeah, well, we need to reconvene as a subcommittee because I think we were kind of tiptoeing around reaching out to some of the cities that have existing park ranger programs to kind of get some questions for them. So we probably should just internally have a meeting. We do still need to circle back with Public Works as well as the police department at some point. So yeah, so let's reconvene as a subcommittee first, and then we can start getting those other meetings scheduled.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then for the pickleball subcommittee, I know we need to meet on that. I think you were going to set up a call to discuss. But the one thing I would like to ask is it possible to pull the data, the usage data and the revenue for Alta Vista?
Yeah, we're actually putting together some of that information, or we'll be finalizing some of that data so that when we go to the city council to talk through that item, we'll have that to share with them. So we can, in the very least, share it with the subcommittee, and you guys can have that data for your review.
Okay, that'd be great.
All right, I'll take on the volunteer acknowledgement. Now, Gil, of course, spearheaded this with Kelly last year, I believe, and we picked it up this year. It's going well. We're trying to make action items every month, and we do have 2 awards going to Gil's Doggy Park volunteers, very deserving. So we'll hopefully have them here next month and do a presentation. We might have to get the certificates done, huh? So we'll get that done the next month. And then we are preparing for the next round will be 2 people. Lila Omura is a homeless advocate employee. So we're going to give her, more than likely, with the support of you guys, we'll give her hopefully the employee award, because we also have a volunteer award and an employee award. And then we'll hopefully give another award to a library volunteer, which I talked to the library admin today, who's awfully excited that we're going to be able to do this. And it might be the Friends of the Library as a group, or it might be an individual, but he's going to help me with that. So this program, I mean, I'm glad we're making progress. It's going very, it's been a lot of fun, honestly. So we're doing well. And we'll hope to get 12 out this year. Maybe we'll get 8 out this year. Maybe we'll get 12. I'm shooting for all 12 by Christmas if I can. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. So let's move along. I think we're finishing up this meeting. Find my place here. So we have director's report, J4.
Yeah, so a number of my reports actually were addressed either through the budget discussion. I was going to provide you an update on the right-of-way for AES, so we talked about that. Mike, city manager, also mentioned that Dominguez Park, that construction has officially began there. You may have noticed the fencing. I'm really excited for that, and that continues to progress. So just wanted to reiterate that. And then the final item is that we are continuing to hire. Or my shameless plug every month. Please have anyone that would be interested in any of our after-school programs, summer day camps, as well as our summer lifeguarding at Seaside Lagoon. Please feel free to have them check our website. Some spaces are more limited than others, but we're certainly open to taking any applications. So please share that with anyone who would be interested. And then I wanted to just share, I know it's kind of small, but I can pass it around. But this is the surfboard that we'll be handing out to the volunteers. We got it engraved and personalized with the city logo on it. So I'll pass it around to you, but this is essentially what we'd be giving to all of our award recipients. So I'm happy to share that tonight. And that concludes all of the director's report and update items for you this evening.
Great, so item K is where we have referrals to staff, member items and referrals to staff for future discussion. Anyone have anything for K?
Before we move on, can I
Yes.
just add on? Sorry,
Oh, of
forgot
course.
to.
Yes,
Our
please.
after-school registration is happening this Tuesday, April 16th right at noon. So we encourage parents to have their Rec Track account up to date. And it's first come, first serve. And then we welcome everyone to join us and the South Bay Parkland Conservancy on Earth Day, an Earth Day celebration on April 21st at Wilderness Park. It'll be an all-day event.
Oh, cool.
And it's funny, at Wilderness Park, I didn't know existed until 2 years ago, when one of our commissioners, I'm in North Redondo, I'm in a different country, okay? I mean, I drove by it 10 times, didn't know what it was. I went in there, it's paradise. It is like unbelievable. So if you haven't been, please go. It's amazing. So we are at K, referrals to staff. Anything to add to next month's agenda or discussions?
I don't have anything.
Same here.
Nothing.
So anything else, Kelly, before we adjourn?
No, nothing else on the
We're
agenda.
at L, adjournment. I guess I will call this meeting adjourned. I need a second and a vote.
I'll second.
So vote?
Aye.
Aye for adjournment, aye. All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.